and welcome everyone. I am Kathryn Dreyer and I am very excited to be presenting the topic of eating for sustained energy with you guys tonight. So we are just waiting for a few more people to join the chat. So I'm just going to chat a little bit while we wait. Obviously, it is stage 6 load shedding, so I'm not sure how many people are able to join the stream, but this is the situation we live in these days, so we just carry on. Please let us know where you are tuning in from. It's nice to see, people tuning in from all around the country. Belinda from Boksburg, thanks for joining the chat. And also feel free to share the stream with friends and family. It is an interesting topic tonight. And just a little bit of background. Okay, watching from Namibia. Okay, nice to see you join. Thank you so much. And Dispatch. Okay, Bloom. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you. Thanks for joining. Just a little bit of background. I have a private practice in Pretoria, and I actually took over this finesse project from Amanda Kate. I do know that she has quite a strong Afrikaans following, so I do apologize. The session is in English tonight, but if you do feel more comfortable asking questions in Afrikaans, feel free to pop that in the comment section, and I will obviously answer to the best of my ability. Okay, there will be a Q&A session at the end of my presentation. Okay, let's just see. Bloom. Okay. So just a little bit of background. As I said, I have a private practice in Pretoria. Previously, I was doing clinical work, working in the government hospitals. I worked in the neonatal ICU, pediatric surgery, pediatric oncology, pediatric ICU, and internal medicine wards. And then my husband and I moved to KZN, to Pietermaritzburg. He was doing his internship there. He was studying medicine at the time. And we spent 2 years there, where I also worked in a government hospital. And then we moved to Sabi, which was a dream because we are both bushveld lovers. Okay, thank you for joining, Hanley van Parijs. So then we, after Sabi, moved back to Joburg, where we welcomed our first little boy. And after that, with our second child, we decided to move back to Pretoria. We moved back to our families and our friends, and just to have that support structure. So I have actually been in private practice in seeing outpatients since 2018. And I must say, I loved my clinical work, but the outpatient private practice it's a passion of mine. I just feel like the follow-up is, there's more follow-up with the clients, and you really get to go on a journey with your clients. And I really am invested in each and every one of my clients. And, if one of their victories, it feels like one of my victories when they reach their goal weight or they just reach their health goals. It's just really amazing to see, and that's why I do love it so much, and I do strive to really individualize my clients' meal plans, and we change things up until we see the results that we want to see. But anyway, I could speak about this for hours and hours, and for the sake of time, I think we should dive into the topic for tonight, which is eating for sustained energy. So it's a dream, to feel like you have an abundance of energy, not to constantly feel like you're starving, and just to have your body functioning optimally, and just for your overall health and well-being. Thank you, Megan Faree, for joining the chat. So we also know that having an abundance of energy it improves your quality of life. And that means we have the energy to do the things that we love, whether it's playing with your children, whether it's reaching your exercise goals, or if it's just getting through the workday without feeling like you have that massive crash in energy where you can barely keep your eyes open. So I'm going to go into why I feel like we do not have enough energy in our lives anymore. And then I'm going to go through solutions, what we can do to actually address these problems. So there is just a slide that I want to show you, just to show you the topics that we are going to cover. So these are the problem areas that I believe contribute to that slump in energy. We are following a westernized diet. We are sedentary. Our meals are not balanced. We're not eating frequently enough. And carbs have been seen as the villain for many years. Okay, hello, Pietru. Thank you for joining. Okay, so with a westernized diet, we follow such a fast-paced life. We are in the middle of the rat race, and convenience is a big part of our lives. We have apps where we can have takeaways delivered to our door within 30 minutes. Westernized diet is a diet that is low in fruits and vegetables. It's highly processed, it's high in refined carbohydrates, it's high in saturated fats, it's high in trans fat, it's high in salt and preservatives. And eating like this regularly actually leads you to become overweight or obese. And in South Africa, 54% of adults are overweight or obese. And that is really, really scary. And the World Obesity Federation actually predicts that it will increase by a further 10% by 2030. And it's a scary reality that we as South Africans are actually facing. So being overweight or obese obviously also leads to your non-communicable diseases. So diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, high cholesterol, metabolic syndrome, and those are all on the rise in South Africa. And it's just a big burden. It increases your mortality rate. It increases pressure on the healthcare system, which is already battling. So it's something that is very important to address. And the fact that these foods are not nutrient dense, they do not provide us with good quality fats, good quality protein, good quality carbohydrates. It is no wonder that we do not have sustained energy. It's no wonder that we do feel that slump in energy at the end of the day. Okay, so the issue of being sedentary is we do not move enough. And the definition is that you spend 6 hours or more sitting or lying down. And I know that many of us spend even more than 6 hours. We get into our cars, we drive to our work, we sit in front of the desk, we get back into our cars, we drive home, and then we sit on the couch. So I can easily say people are spending 8, 9, 10 hours a day being sedentary. A sedentary lifestyle is also known to cause fatigue. So that is a known cause of fatigue. Okay. Another problem that we do face is that our meals are not balanced. We find ourselves going, down the internet rabbit hole. There's just rampant misinformation out there. Which diets should you follow? What should you eat? What shouldn't you eat? Should you be on the cabbage soup diet? Should you be skipping multiple meals and multiple snacks? We're following advice from people who do not have the scientific background to be giving this advice. Even if there are diets out there on the internet, for example, the Mediterranean diet, that is a diet that is high in fruits, high in vegetables, high in seafood, olive oil, whole grains, and it's actually a diet that has quite strong scientific backing in helping to prevent high blood pressure, diabetes, lowering cholesterol. But we have TikTok influencers who are promoting this diet, but doing it completely wrong and including foods that aren't typical of this diet, like red meat or refined carbohydrates. And unfortunately, consumers they believe them and they follow these fads, and they, it can actually lead to, all of this build up of misinformation and confusion, and that is also a health burden. Okay, and we also see information about cutting out whole food groups like your carbohydrates, which I will touch on more a little bit later. Or we do also follow these crazy fad diets where they say, you can lose 5 kilograms in 2 days. We just don't know where to look anymore because there is just such an overflow of this conflicting advice. Okay, so the other topic we need to cover, the other problem, is that carbohydrates are the villain, and they have been considered the villain for quite some time now. But before we go into all of that, I just want to kind of go back to basics and explain a little bit more about the carbohydrates actually. So what are carbohydrates? Put in simple terms, carbohydrates are sugar molecules. And along with protein and fat, they are one of the 3 main nutrients that we find in our food and drinks. Your body breaks carbohydrates down into glucose, and then that glucose, which is your sugar, goes into the bloodstream. What then happens is your pancreas releases insulin, and the insulin takes the sugar out of your blood and it gives it to your body's cells so that your body can actually then use that sugar as energy. And your body is very happy to use glucose as its main source of energy. It's important for the cells and your tissues and your organs. And it can be used immediately from the bloodstream, or it can be stored in your muscle or your liver for later use. So that's just a bit on what carbohydrates are. We get different types of carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are broken down into 3 categories. We have your sugars, so that's carbohydrates in your most simple form. They can be added to foods like the sugar in sweets, desserts, processed foods, cool drink, and it can also be found naturally in your fruits, vegetables, and milk. Then we have your starches. So your starches are more like your complex carbohydrates. They're made of lots of strings of simple sugar. So they need to be broken down so that your body can use the sugar for energy. And that includes more like your bread, cereal, pasta, and then certain vegetables like potatoes, peas, corn, butternut, pumpkin. Okay. And then the last category is fiber. Very, very important complex carbohydrate. Your body can't break down most fibers, and eating food with fiber can help you feel fuller for longer, can prevent your food cravings. Benefits of fiber: it helps to prevent gastrointestinal kind of distress. It can help prevent constipation, and as well as following a high fiber diet has actually been shown to reduce your risk of colon cancer. But fiber can also help to lower your cholesterol levels. So what happens is the cholesterol binds to the fiber, and that's excreted through your feces instead of being absorbed into the bloodstream. Fiber is also shown to help regulate your glucose levels. So there are so many benefits to carbohydrates, which is also fiber, and why would we want to cut out a whole food group when you have those benefits? Okay, so fiber is also mostly found from plants like your fruits, vegetables, your beans and legumes, and whole grains. I just want to touch on common foods that include carbohydrates. So we obviously know that carbs can be found in grains like your bread, your rice, your pasta, your cereals, also found in fruits, and dairy like your milk and your yogurt, legumes like your chickpeas, lentils, soya, obviously your snack foods that contain sugar, your juices, and then your starchy vegetables like your butternut, your pumpkin, your potato, your sweet potato. Okay, so now we've spoken about what carbohydrates are. We need to speak about how they are not all created equally. So I know a lot of you have probably heard about GI, or you've seen it on packaging, low GI bread, low GI pastas and things like that. So we've seen it on the label, but what does it actually mean? So GI is your glycemic index, and that is the rate and absorption of a carbohydrate into your bloodstream. So how fast the carbohydrate will enter your blood or raise your blood sugar level. Low GI carbohydrates, they are seen as the good guys because they are released more slowly into your bloodstream. They keep your blood sugar levels stable. They prevent slumps in energy. And obviously we know a slump in energy can trigger food craving and overeating. And it also just helps to develop a balanced appetite. We also have intermediate GI carbohydrates. So they enter the bloodstream a little bit faster than your low GI carbohydrates, but not as quickly as your high GI carbohydrates. So they're okay to kind of consume in moderation. Okay, then you get your high GI carbohydrates. They are the foods that we kind of want to tend to avoid because they cause a big spike in your blood sugar, which then leads to a crash in your blood sugar. So they are released very rapidly into the bloodstream. And then that is when you do get that crash where you feel tired, you feel sluggish. And with the rapid raise in blood sugar, your body is not going to use all of that sugar. So it will then tend to store that excess sugar as fat, which is not what we want. I'm just going to show you a picture of a graph just to reiterate my point. Okay, so you can see the red line, that is your high GI carbohydrates. You can see there is a massive increase in sugar as it rises up quite high, and then there's a rapid decline. So that's when you feel your crash in your blood sugar level. The orange or yellow graph is your more intermediate, medium GI foods. So you can see the blood sugar is raised slightly more slowly. There is still a crash, but it's not as steep as your high GI foods. Then we get your low GI foods. That's the green graph. You can see the sugar enters the bloodstream a lot more slowly over a longer period of time. It's going to sustain your energy for longer. You're not going to feel as hungry, and that is kind of what we want. With the red graph, so to your red curve, what do you think happens when you have such a spike in your blood sugar? What do you think your poor pancreas has to deal with? What happens is your pancreas has to release a lot more insulin to take that sugar out of the bloodstream. So what I like to tell my clients is that when you have high levels of insulin in your bloodstream, that leads to insulin resistance. And I like to use the analogy that, we all know, we all played talkie as children. You go and you knock on the door, and then the person opens it and you've run away, and then you knock again and then they open it and you've run away. You knock a third time, this person knows that they're being pranked, so they stop opening the door. And that's what it's like when you have high levels of insulin in your bloodstream. Insulin comes knocking, the cell opens the door to let the sugar in, and then it closes it. Insulin comes knocking again, the cell opens the door to let the sugar in, and then it closes it. Insulin comes knocking again, the cell opens the door, closes it, insulin knocks again, and now the cell says, no, I'm done. It's too much. I'm keeping my doors closed. So the cells become resistant to the insulin. They don't want to open those doors anymore, and they just stay shut. So if you're looking at your green curve, your pancreas has to release a lot less insulin to cover those carbohydrates. Your cells are happy to keep opening the doors. So that's why we want to follow a lower GI diet, because the body is happy. Okay, and I'm just going to tell you a bit of a personal story just to elaborate on that. And my husband and I were traveling from the Timbavati back to Pietermaritzburg, which is about a 9-hour drive. And the dietitian wife failed to pack low GI snacks for the drive. So what did we do? We got McDonald's. And we were that red curve. We were that red curve for most of the trip back. And we had to tag team each other to take turns to drive. So driving, I drove for 30 minutes, he drove for 30 minutes, I drove for 30 minutes. And it was honestly a nightmare. And I had that typical crash in sugar. We just could not keep our eyes open. And it wasn't a great experience when you're driving so far. Okay, so with GI, there are a lot of lists that you can find, breaking down your grains, your fruits and vegetables, your dairy, your meat and meat alternatives. So you can find those lists on the internet, but you can also go look on the GIFSA site. So that's the GI Foundation of South Africa. They have a lot of extensive food lists showing you which foods are low GI, which are medium, which are high GI. And they also, they sell some nice recipe books that actually have low GI recipes. So it's a really nice site to go look at if that is something that you're interested in. Okay, so I also just want to speak about why carbohydrates are so important for sustained energy and what happens when you cut them out. So we know that carbohydrates are converted more quickly to energy than protein and fat. So they actually help to keep your body, to prevent your body from breaking muscle down and organ tissue. They also help to metabolize fat, and they are vital for brain function. Your body is just happier when it is using glucose as a fuel. And eliminating carbohydrates, that can force you into a state of ketosis. So that's when your body is burning stored fat, which is accurate to a certain point. But if your calorie intake is also too low, then your body will start to burn muscle or even organ tissue. And that will weaken you and can actually threaten your health. It's definitely not a key to sustained energy, and it's not sustainable long term. And, I'll often have clients who come in and they've kind of been on a diet that's very low or no carb, and they've gained the weight back plus more. And that being said, cutting out carbohydrates can almost be seen as a high GI situation, because your body wants to get that glucose from somewhere. So what it does is it starts to break down your muscle. So it takes the protein and breaks it down into amino acids. It takes your fat, breaks fat down into fatty acids. That all goes to the liver, and it's converted to glucose anyway through a process that we call gluconeogenesis. But because your body isn't really happy doing this, it's kind of seen as a bit of a panic situation, and then it's having to dip into these stores to convert it into glucose. The gluconeogenesis system then can almost be seen as a high GI carbohydrate, and you still sometimes will then get that spike in energy and that crash and the higher levels of insulin, which can still then anyway lead to insulin resistance. So it is important to definitely have carbohydrates in the diet. Okay, so we've spoken about all the problems. Now I want to talk to you about the solutions. What are we going to do about this? So, westernized diet, what can we do? We want to eat foods as close to their natural state as possible. So minimally processed with maximum nutritional benefits, nutrient-dense foods. We want to avoid overcooking your vegetables. Let's not cook them until they are mush and they've lost a lot of their beneficial properties. We want to also make sure we are eating more fruits, more vegetables. We are avoiding or limiting salt and sugar. We want to limit our high GI refined carbohydrates. We want to avoid those takeaways. We want to delete the apps that tempt us to, order those pizzas and burgers and, highly processed foods. We want to drink a lot more water. We want to aim for 2 to 3 liters of water a day. And we also want to just limit our alcohol intake. So these are just ways we can try and minimize eating in a westernized manner. The problem of being sedentary, we need to move more. We need to make time for ourselves to be more active. So if you do find you're also stuck at your desk, try to get up every half an hour and do a lap or two around the office. Park far away at the malls. Try to take the stairs instead of the escalator or the lift. Set time limits on sedentary behavior. Don't allow yourself to lie on the couch and binge watch Netflix for 7 hours. Try to get out with friends and family on the weekends. And exercise speeds up your metabolism. And obviously, in speeding up your metabolism, you promote increased energy levels, which is what we want at the end of the day. The recommendation is actually to exercise for at least 30 minutes, 5 times a week. So that's 150 minutes a week. If you haven't been exercising before, as long as you start and as you get fitter, you can just build on that. So we just need to move more. We need to make time for our health. Okay, the problem about our meals not being balanced or eating too infrequently, we need to make sure that we are eating a variety of foods from all the food groups, from proteins, from fats, from carbs. Cutting out whole food groups is not the answer, and there is no quick fix. We also just want to make sure that we're not eating too infrequently. So ideally, we want to be having breakfast and then maybe a mid-morning snack and then lunch and then a late afternoon snack and then supper. But we're wanting to choose healthy snack options that keep our metabolism going, because with our metabolism going and speeding up, we will be more effectively also burning fat. So we want to opt for things like unsalted nuts, low-fat yogurt, fruit, vegetable sticks, maybe lean biltong, all of the things that we just want to fuel our body. So I just want to show you a picture. It's really going back to basics of the plate model. This is just an example of actually how your plate should look at your main meal, so mainly lunch and supper. So we want half of that plate coming from your non-starchy, colorful vegetables. So your salad foods, vegetables, your broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, spinach, your non-starchy veg. Then a quarter of the plate we want to have from your starches, preferably your low GI carbohydrates. And then the other quarter of your plate you want to have from lean protein. So opting a little bit more maybe for chicken and fish if possible, but obviously lean red meat is also there, and your meat alternatives like your legumes and all of that falls into that category as well. So it's just a good old-fashioned picture of how your plate should be looking. Like I said, we're going back to basics, and that's what it is. Okay, so the problem with carbs being the villain, we have now established just how important they are. And the thing is just to focus on the correct type of carbohydrate, so trying to opt for low GI, but also the correct quantity of carbohydrates. If you overeat on any of the food groups, you will also gain weight. So I just want to share a story about a client that I saw a few years back. She was following an almost no carbohydrate diet, and she was exercising very, very hard. She was training for triathlons, and she was frustrated because she couldn't understand why her weight was going up, because she was eating very little and she was exercising very hard. And so she came to me, and I just, after taking her history and everything like that, I said to her, you might be afraid by what I'm about to tell you, but you are not eating enough for the amount of exercise that you're doing, and you are not eating enough carbohydrates. So I gave her a meal plan, and she took it and she stuck to it. And she came back a few weeks later, and we put her back on the scale, and she could not believe the results. Her fat mass had gone way down, her muscle mass had gone up, and she had improved her times in all of the activities of the swimming, running, and cycling. And it just shows you, she introduced carbohydrates back. That helped to spare her muscle. She was able to build muscle, which was what helped to speed the metabolism up, and which is what helped to actually burn that fat. So I don't want clients to be afraid of carbohydrates. They are so important for health in the correct amount and the correct type. That being said, with sport, you can play around a little bit with your higher GI carbohydrates as well. So generally, we kind of recommend a low GI carbohydrate before a major event. And then during the event and after, we actually recommend a higher GI carbohydrate just to replete those glycogen stores that have been depleted during the exercise. So that being said, that is why it's always an individualized approach. There is no one size that fits all. And that is also why it's very important to check in with your healthcare professional, check in with your dietitian, just for an individualized approach to your health and your goals. And all of these solutions that I've discussed now in combination would lead to more sustained energy and just a better quality of life. And that is me for this evening. Thank you so much for joining the chat. And yeah, it's time for a bit of a Q&A session. So let me just see if there are any questions. Okay. Okay, so if the one Facebook user says, is something like intermittent fasting viable? Does it help with insulin resistance? With intermittent fasting, we can only really go, with our medical background and our degree, we rely on research. So we can only go with what the evidence actually says. And the research does show that intermittent fasting can be as effective for weight loss as your normal continuous energy restriction, which is what we normally do and calculate for clients. So it can be viable, but that being said, it depends on the client. So I do have some clients who have tried it and it's worked, and I have other clients who've tried it and it hasn't worked. So it just depends from person to person. And I would say if you are prone to kind of overeating at the next meal, then it's not really a good option for you. And I would say, is it going to be a good way to have your sustainable energy? I would say I don't think so. We do want to make sure we have some glucose in the bloodstream. Does it help with insulin resistance? I would say you do need more carbohydrates and more frequent meals with insulin resistance, because we want to avoid that spike. So with intermittent fasting, if you are still going to have only one meal a day and you're having that massive meal, you can still have that spike in blood sugar. So even if you are eating maybe low GI carbohydrates, if you're eating too many low GI carbohydrates, it will still spike the sugar. You will still then have higher levels of insulin, and that is not good for insulin resistance. I hope that answered your question. Opinion on drinking. What is a guideline or opinion on drinking coffee for energy throughout the day? The guideline for coffee, it depends. You can maybe drink up to 3 cups. It depends on how your body responds to the caffeine. That being said, it can also dehydrate you. So the guideline I would say for every cup of coffee that you are drinking, you should be drinking a cup of water after that to prevent dehydration. And we don't want to be drinking too much coffee throughout the day either. Okay. Okay, let me see. Pietru. Pietru, I don't know if you want to elaborate if it's a type of fasting that you're doing, but it seems like you're saying you are very tired between 11 and 2. This is really where the low GI diet with small frequent meals actually helps, because it is keeping your blood sugar levels stable. It does sound like you are having a blood sugar crash, and the fact that you're very tired when eating or after eating does indicate that you are maybe having some some reactions with your glucose. And the fact that you say you do have diabetes in your family, I would definitely recommend just getting your glucose checked, and maybe checking your insulin levels as well, just to make sure, to either rule it out. Does eating protein with carbs help with more sustained glucose release? Yes, it does help to prevent a spike in your glucose. So especially if you are a bit more insulin resistant or if you are diabetic, I always recommend combining protein and carbohydrates together, just because it does make the glucose into the bloodstream just a little bit slower. So it does help with a slower glucose release, which is what you want. We'll give a few more minutes for any other questions to come through. Oh, Helene, it's a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed the talk. Thank you, Patricia. And Delphine. And I just wanted to add, thank you, Facebook user. I just wanted to add that this recording will be available on all of the platforms. So if any questions do come through, or if people didn't have an opportunity to watch and they watch it at a later stage and then feel like they have some questions, then they can just post them in the comments, and we will keep an eye on them, and we will definitely get to those answers. Thank you. I hope you did enjoy it. We'll just give a few more moments for any more that may come through. Okay, thank you so much everyone for joining the stream, and I do hope you guys enjoyed the talk, and I hope that you learned something, and I hope you all have a good evening, and yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Yolanda.
As 'n trotse borg nooi ons jou by die MOS Inisiatief uit om saam met ons in te skakel maandag aande om 8:00. Dit is mos lekker.